Good morning. I call to order the informal meeting of the plenary to hear a briefing by the Secretary General, His Excellency António Guterres, on his report entitled Making Migration Work for All. The report has been issued in document A/72/643. I'd like to warmly welcome all of you to this meeting. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Louise Arbour, Special Representative of the Secretary General for International Migration and Secretary General of the Intergovernmental Conference to adopt the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. Allow me now to deliver my opening statement. Mr. Secretary General, SRSG Arbour, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming this morning for a briefing on this report of the Secretary General. At the outset, I want to pause to pay tribute to the former Special Representative on International Migration, Mr. Peter Sutherland. Peter was a fierce advocate for migrants who contributed significantly to the progress we have made over the years on migration issues. It was his passion that has led us here today to better protect migrants and refugees. Colleagues, the negotiations to agree on the Global Compact on Migration will be a focus in the month ahead. I therefore welcome this briefing for the membership today. The report sets out many key issues for consideration in the collective efforts to shape the Compact. As you are aware, the report comes at the end of the second phase of consultations. We have made quite some progress over these two phases, up to the successful stock-taking meeting in Puerto Vallarta. Now it is time for all of us, member states, civil society, academia, and migrants themselves, to start 2018 with a renewed determination. We need to focus on meeting our goal. Before giving the floor to the Secretary General, I want to emphasize 2 points. The first is that in developing the Compact, we have the opportunity to maximize the benefits of international migration. Let us harness this opportunity. We have the chance to strengthen our communities, both at home and abroad. We can protect those who are most vulnerable and promote human dignity. We can bolster our economies at all levels, making full use of the economic activity attached to migration. As sovereign states, instead of closing borders and trying to stop migration, we can strengthen border management. That way we will better know, determine and control who enters our countries. And we can also reduce the need for irregular migration. We will have to find the balance between interests and perspectives. We need to do this in a way that fulfills our commitments and results in benefits for everyone. To do so, we have to move into the next phase, ready to actually negotiate. So for my second point, I want to reiterate something I said in Puerto Vallarta. We must all come ready to listen, to explain, to use what we have learned, to be flexible, to compromise. This kind of genuine dialogue is the essence of every successful negotiation. The negotiating rooms should not be the place for rhetoric, fear-mongering, or populist sentiments. Instead, it must be the space for vision, compassion, and leadership. It must be filled with trust, confidence, and understanding. It must be the place where we recognize and respect each other's concerns and challenges, and work to find mutually acceptable solutions. It is only by working together that we will have a successful outcome. Make no mistake, people will continue to move. As we speak, many are making decisions about leaving their homes. Many of these will put their lives and futures at risk. We must therefore resolve to craft a concrete compact by July. In doing so, we will fulfill our commitment to the people we represent here at the United Nations. Dear colleagues, it will be up to us to show the world what we can do, united, to address the global challenges before us, to better the lives of people everywhere. And once agreed in July, we need not wait till December to start implementing. We can build the partnerships and start preparing the structures we will need to implement the compact. With today's launch of the Secretary General's report, we now have all the tools necessary to start the negotiation phase. And so, without further ado, I now give the floor to the Secretary General. Mr. Secretary General, please.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to be with all of you to present the report, Making Migration Work for All. This serves as my principal input to the zero draft of the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration. The adoption of this compact stands as one of our most important collective priorities for 2018. As we look forward to the zero draft, I would like to commend your efforts to date under the wise stewardship of Mexico and Switzerland, aided by the President of the General Assembly and my Special Representative, Louise Arbour. And allow me to express a very deep gratitude to Louise Arbour and her team. Your extraordinary contribution was absolutely vital for me to be able to present a report that I hope you will find both bold and constructive. We have an opportunity to fashion for the first time a truly global response to migration. It is an opportunity to maximize the contribution that millions of migrants are already making to our societies and to agree a set of actions to ensure that the rights of all migrants are fully respected. Excellencies, my report describes the reality of migration today, but it outlines what a system of safe, orderly and regular migration could realistically look like. It identifies key challenges and possible solutions. And it calls for more concerted collective action to deal with the unbearable limbo in which many migrants find themselves trapped. Let me emphasize, migration is a positive global phenomenon. It powers economic growth, reduces inequalities, connects diverse societies, and helps us ride the demographic waves of population growth and decline. It is also a source of political tensions and human tragedies. But the majority of migrants live and work legally. Unfortunately, others live in the shadows, unprotected by the law and unable to contribute fully to society. And the desperate minority put their lives at risk to enter countries where they face suspicion and abuse. Globally, migration remains poorly managed. The impact can be seen in the humanitarian crisis affecting people on the move and in human rights violations suffered by those living in slavery or enduring degrading working conditions. It can be seen, too, in the political impact of public perception that wrongly sees migration as out of control. The consequences include increased mistrust and policies aimed more at stopping than facilitating human movement. In my report, I call for us to focus on the overwhelming positives of migration and to use facts, not prejudice, as the basis for addressing its challenges. Above all, I urge a respectful discourse that places our collective humanity at the center of the debate. Migrants make a major contribution to international development, both by their work and by sending remittances to their home countries. Remittances added up to nearly $600 billion last year, 3 times all development aid. The fundamental challenge is to maximize the benefits of this orderly, productive form of migration while stamping out the abuses and prejudice that make life hell for a minority of migrants. States need to strengthen the rule of law underpinning how they manage and protect migrants for the benefit of their economies, their societies, and migrants themselves. Authorities that erect major obstacles to migration or place severe restrictions on migrants' work opportunities inflict needless economic self-harm as they impose barriers to having their labor needs met in an orderly and legal fashion. Worse still, they unintentionally encourage illegal migration. Aspiring migrants denied legal pathways to travel inevitably fall back on irregular methods. This not only puts them in vulnerable positions, but also undermines government's authorities itself. The best way to end the stigma of illegality and abuse around migrants is in fact for governments to put in place more legal pathways for migration. These will remove incentives for individuals to break the rules while better meeting the needs of markets for foreign labor. And it will also aid in efforts to clamp down on smugglers and traffickers and to assist their victims. Simultaneously, development cooperation policies must take human mobility into account. It is essential to provide more opportunities for people to be able to live in dignity in their own countries and regions. Migration should be an act of hope, not of despair. We must also address the drama we witness in mixed flows of refugees and migrants. What happens all too often with these movements represents a humanitarian tragedy and an abdication of our human rights commitments. They are reflective of acute policy failures, of emergency response, of conflict prevention, of good governance, of development, and of international solidarity. I call for greater international cooperation to remove those failures and to protect vulnerable migrants. In parallel, we must re-establish the integrity of the refugee protection regime in line with international law. Excellencies, my report addresses a number of elements for consideration in shaping the global compact on migration. I will highlight three: the need for action, the need for engagement, and the need for a UN that is fit for purpose. First, our focus must be on implementation. The past decade has seen an enriching development of both our understanding of migration and its grounding in human rights. It's time now to build on these declarations rather than simply reiterate them. Second, everyone has a part to play. On this, let me particularly attribute credit to the incomparable whose death last week is such a loss for us all. Improving the management of migration is preeminently a matter of state responsibility. But it demands also the knowledge, the capacity, and the commitment of many others. The consultation phase of the Global Compact has benefited hugely from the participation of a wide range of actors. Municipalities, parliaments, civil society, the private sector, regional organizations, the media, academia, and migrants themselves all have vital roles. Moving forward, I urge you to maximize the space for their contributions. Third, as United Nations finally ensure that migration is an issue squarely in its agenda, we have the responsibility to ask ourselves whether we are best organized and equipped to support the Compact's implementation. For you, the Member States, this will require consideration of how to ensure ongoing review of the impact of the Global Compact. What we focus on in 2018 may not be what we need to focus on in 10 or 15 years' time. And we'll also need to reflect on how best to ensure oversight of migration within the UN system. There are many fora addressing migration, but none with comprehensive oversight. This merits consideration. I am committed to ensuring that the UN system is best organized to ensure that it can support you in following through on the Compact. In my report, I stress my determination to strengthen how we work on this issue, consistent with my proposed management reforms and strengthening of the UN development system, taking full advantage of the IOM's important and welcome move in 2016 towards the UN system. It is a phenomenon that touches on all our collective priorities, from the pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals to the promotion and protection of peace and universal human rights. I urge all Member States to engage openly and actively in the negotiations ahead. I encourage you to work towards the adoption of a solutions-oriented global compact on migration at the International Conference in Morocco later this year. And I stand ready to assist however best I can. Thank you very much.
I thank the Secretary General for his briefing. I now give the floor to Ms. Louise Arbour, Special Representative of the Secretary General for International Migration and Secretary General of the Intergovernmental Conference.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to join the President of the General Assembly and the Secretary General for the launch of his report, Making Migration Work for All. At the outset, I wish to echo the words of the President and the Secretary General in remembering Peter Sutherland. His groundbreaking work was crucial in bringing migration issues to the center of the international agenda, and in the last few months, I've had the privilege of working with many people who were part of his enormous efforts to advance this issue and who are missing him sorely. Let me also thank the many of you who have shared written inputs towards the Secretary General's report. Your contributions were very helpful in shaping our thinking and our analysis. The report also reflects the very informative discussions undertaken in the course of last year in the form of the thematic sessions and the regional consultations, as well as the stock-taking meeting in Mexico just last month. I believe that we have collectively come a long way in understanding the complexities of the issues and the range of policy options available to us as we work to better manage international migration. We have also recognized the need for better data collection and analysis, as sound, smart policy choices must rest on facts, not on assumptions and myths. The President of the General Assembly and the Secretary General have both very comprehensively addressed many of the key messages in the report, so I would like to keep my comments to 3 brief points. First, the Secretary General's report frames the promotion of safe, orderly, and regular migration through 3 key pillars of the United Nations system: sustainable development, security, and human rights. The link between migration and development is already very well articulated in the Sustainable Development Goals as an essential tool to reduce inequalities both between and within countries. Taking the lead from the New York Declaration, the compact should aim to maximize the benefits of migration for all concerns, improving the impact of remittances on developing countries, while contributing to the continued prosperity of the many countries who will increasingly need to import human resources in the years ahead. Further, increasing legal pathways for migrants to access labor markets will, in time, reduce recourse to irregular, often dangerous migratory routes and enable states to better manage the migrant populations on their territory. As it promotes an increase in the variety of legal pathways, the report also explicitly recognizes state sovereignty as the basis for international cooperation towards better managed migration. Subject to existing international law, such as the principle of non-refoulement, states have the sovereign prerogative, indeed the responsibility, to determine who may enter their territory, for what purpose, and on what terms and conditions. This is exercised in part through border management procedures, but more broadly through a series of measures that should address security in 3 interrelated dimensions: state security, public safety, and human security. Addressing security does not mean that migration should be conceived primarily through a security lens, or that migrants should be assumed to inherently present security threats. From our very first thematic session last May, dedicated to the human rights of migrants, through to today, we have consistently heard the call for the Global Compact to be people-centered in its approach. Migration impacts the lives not only of migrants themselves, but also the future of the people they leave behind and of the new communities in which they settle. Sound migration policies will be attentive to the rights, needs, and sensitivities of all those affected by the change that human mobility inevitably entails. Second, I would like to reiterate a point that I made at the closing of the stock-taking meeting in Mexico last month. That is, that the objective of facilitating safe, orderly, and regular migration through a global compact on international cooperation is essentially a project based on the rule of law. And I don't mean by this that the global compact must be legally binding or that it must lead to a flurry of domestic legislation. Rather, it must pursue an objective of fairness and equality rather than tolerate a state of danger and chaos. It should mean expanding legal pathways rather than risking an expansion of dangerous migratory routes. And it should mean treating migrants, including irregular migrants, with dignity and respect as a way to combat xenophobia and racism. Fair migration laws, fairly applied, benefit all. They increase predictable and orderly outcomes for states, safe and inclusive environment for both migrants and for the host communities. And finally, I said at the outset that I believe we have come a long way together in dealing with these difficult issues. This increased understanding has not always been reflected in world public opinion, and recent developments and reactions towards international migration have given many of us cause for concern. I stress again that the negotiations ahead will require your political leadership and your commitment to finding common ground towards a global compact that will benefit states, migrants, and communities alike. And I reiterate my support to your efforts, and I look forward to our continued cooperation in the months ahead. Thank you.
I thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General for International Migration for her statement. I now open the floor for comments or questions. First, I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ireland.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a very important day as we take a big step in doing what the Secretary General described as fashioning a truly global response to what we think is one of the great challenges of our time, migration. I wanted to congratulate the Secretary General and the Special Representative Louise Arbour and her team for producing such a really excellent report. It's a big day, but also as the representative of Ireland, Mr. President, you'll understand if I say it's also a day coloured by deep sadness at the loss of someone I regard as a great Irishman, but above all also a great, great champion of migrants, Peter Sutherland. Peter's impact during his decade as Special Representative of two Secretaries General on migration was really exceptional. I knew Peter well. He was a lifelong, committed multilateralist. His work to place migration on the UN agenda was driven both by a really deep belief in the importance of the UN and multilateralism, and by a burning desire to ensure that the human rights of the most vulnerable were protected. He was really passionately committed to ensuring that the challenges of crisis migration be shared equitably amongst the global community. His own great mantra that he never ceased to remind us of, proximity does not mean equal responsibility, will continue to ring in these halls as we work towards a fairer, better world in the global compact on migration. Mr. President, in my own Irish language, we say at times like this, Ní bheidh a leithéid a rís ann. That means we won't see someone like this again. I'm glad that the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, adopted by our heads of state and government in 2016, recognised Peter himself by name, and I hope that his spirit, mission and vision will inspire us as we work towards the Global Compact. I wanted to thank you, President, the Secretary General, Special Representative Arbour, and all the colleagues who in recent days have been in contact with me personally to express sympathy on this sad loss, and I plan to ensure that I bring those when I'm in Dublin next week to Peter's family. Thank you very much indeed.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ireland. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Secretary General. I have the honor of speaking on behalf of the European Union and its 28 member states. But before I comment on the report, I'd like to take the opportunity to also pay tribute to the late Peter Sullivan, who served as Special Representative of the Secretary General for Migration for over a decade. He was also a European Commissioner, and I had the privilege of witnessing his commitment to European integration. And I can tell you that Peter's death is also Europe's loss. Peter's commitment and contribution to the issue that brings us here together today was unparalleled, and his death is a great loss for the international community. The Global Compact will be shaped by his vision and built on the groundwork he carefully laid over many years. As regards the report, I would like to thank the Secretary General and the Special Representative, Madame Arbour, for this strong vision on how migration can turn into an opportunity for all. The report clearly reflects the richness of the many dedicated discussions we had during last year. It is a milestone on our way to a global compact, and it will certainly be an important element in the negotiations. We welcome the narrative the report provides, a narrative that recognizes human mobility as a natural part of humankind's past, present, and certainly future, a narrative that is fully embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals and in the policies of the European Union. At the same time, we thank the Secretary General for turning our collective attention also to the challenges that need to be addressed in order to make the Global Compact on migration a real success. Allow me to make a few more detailed comments on what the European Union thinks the Global Compact should be about. In our view, the Global Compact should become a global framework in which different interests of countries of origin, transit, and destination are balanced. Migration can provide opportunities for all only if it is safe, orderly, and regular. We want to see a compact that makes practical suggestions for how the international community can work towards this. In our view, the Global Compact must build on solidarity and shared responsibility, both between states and between states and migrants. Let me be clear on one point. If I may, let me be clear on one point. For the European Union, the Global Compact should allow a people-centered approach that puts the human rights of all migrants, as well as the protection of migrants in vulnerable situations, at its core center. This also includes a renewed fight against trafficking in human beings, the eradication of modern forms of slavery, as well as a closer global cooperation to break the business model of people smugglers. In our view, in the Global Compact on migration, we should commit to effectively address the drivers of irregular migration and forced displacement, and invest in sustainable development and opportunities for all, especially for young people. Recognizing the nexus between migration policy and development cooperation is vital in this respect. Shared responsibility also means that we look into making better use of existing legal pathways. At the same time, as you noted in your report, the Global Compact should uphold the right of all states to determine whom they admit to their territories, as well as every state's responsibility for the well-being of its citizens. That includes the full recognition of all states' obligation to take back its own nationals following thorough procedures and the full cooperation on return, readmission, and reintegration. Through the Global Compact, we should foster our cooperation on better border management, which respects the rights and dignity of migrants and enables states to exercise their sovereign right to control who enters their territory. The Global Compact should also help us to counter xenophobic misperceptions and tackle racial discrimination. It should put in place provisions to ensure that migrants and potential migrants have better access to data and information, to counter false and unrealistic expectations, and ensure that migration decisions are fully informed. In order to make migration work for all, as we all wish, we need to strengthen partnerships with diaspora groups, local communities, civil society, academia, and the private sector. We also need to focus on better integration at the joint responsibility of host states, who should ensure access to basic services, and of migrants, who should respect national and local laws, rules, and customs. Last but not least, we support the aim outlined in the report of making the UN fit for migration. As we stated before, the European Union and its member states support a follow-up mechanism that is based on existing structures. It is consistent with the Secretary General's wider approach for reforming the UN development system and makes use of the vast operational experience of the International Organization for Migration as the lead agency on migration within the UN system. In this regard, we welcome the report's proposal to task IOM with a coordinating role in the follow-up process. We would like to learn more about the rationale behind the proposal to transform the IOM into a specialized agency. Let me close, Mr. President, by expressing my sincere appreciation for the great effort that the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Madame Louise Arbour, and her whole team put into this report. Madame Arbour, you succeeded in reminding us that migration is not only about very complex political questions and technicalities, but first and foremost, it is about the fate and well-being of human beings. The European Union and its member states are committed to this inclusive, multi-stakeholder process, and we will play a constructive role in the shaping of an actionable and substantive global compact. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the European Union, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you, President. We should like to express our condolences to the government and people of Ireland for the passing away of Peter Sutherland. We pay tribute to his legacy, which will always be remembered, particularly on the topic we are dealing with. We should like to thank the Secretary General for the presentation of the report. We have briefly looked it over, and we note that it is a very substantive and ambitious document indeed. We were particularly interested in the Secretary General's ideas on how to bring in issues linked to management and governance of international migrations, and to bring all of this into the process of reform that the organization is carrying out currently. We would like to stress two elements of the report in particular, which we believe to be of particular importance. Firstly, we are very concerned about and reject the barriers currently being set up to put obstacles in the way of migration. These do not resolve the causes which lead millions of human beings to migrate and who will continue to migrate. We would also like to underline the fact that it is crucial to change the current situation of poverty, inequality, inequity, particularly in developing countries. This is necessary if we really wish to find a lasting solution to the phenomenon of migration. Full enjoyment of the right to development is the way to balancing migratory flows worldwide. The shared responsibility of all states must be assumed in addressing this global issue. So with regard to sovereignty and equality of all states, and with respect to the integrity and dignity and well-being of human beings and their families, including the protection and full respect for their rights. This is an issue which must be addressed. We continue to pay particular attention to these topics, and will continue to do so during the intergovernmental negotiations and discussions which will start this year, and which we will participate in, as usual, actively and constructively. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Morocco.
Thank you very much, Chairman, President. I'd like to begin by thanking the President of the General Assembly for organising this very important meeting. We'd also like to convey our condolences to Ireland and the family of Mr. Peter Sutherland, who sadly passed away. I congratulate the Secretary-General on his report and also thank him for his presence among us this morning to personally present that report. This demonstrates the importance that the Secretary-General attaches to issues around migration, and we welcome that. I'd like to pay tribute to the work done by Ms. Louise Arbour, the Special Representative of the Secretary-General on Migration, and also the work done by her team in preparing this report and in the process leading to the International Conference on Migration in 2018. Morocco shares the views and observations of the Secretary-General on the situation around migration around the world, and in particular the need to review the approaches that the international community takes to migration issues. According to the New York Declaration, and I quote, "Migration calls for global approaches and solutions," end quote. The Global Pact on Migration and the 28th Conference represent a unique opportunity here. We are of the view that it is crucial that we take a positive approach in managing this issue, in particular in making migration beneficial to all by stressing the link between this issue and the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. We must also give migrants the means to achieve their potential. We must promote regular migration and also put in place cooperative security measures to ensure orderly migration. We also wholeheartedly subscribe to the importance attached to female migrants in the Secretary-General's report. Furthermore, we must stress that the Global Pact will allow us to reinforce the international system for the management of migration, hence the need to prepare for a new approach to migration within the United Nations, addressing the fragmentary nature of the approaches currently taken. Morocco hails the Secretary-General's determination to ensure that the system is completely able to make a quick and effective contribution to the implementation of the Global Pact, and also congratulates the Secretary-General on his intention to have internal consultations on the best way to configure the UN system to coordinate work on migration. Morocco fully endorses the Secretary-General's proposal on a periodic high-level review conference to be held after the Intergovernmental Conference of 2018. Morocco will have the honour to host the conference in December 2018 and will make a positive contribution to the Pact and, as is customary, will spare no effort to ensure the success of the conference. I would like to say that we will also be holding the 11th Forum on Development, which we co-chair with Germany, and that will be before the 2018 Migration Conference. Finally, Morocco plays an important role in addressing these issues at continental level as well. His Majesty the King Mohammed VI accepted to hold the summit in January 2017 to coordinate the work of the Continental Organization on Migration. Furthermore, I'd like to stress that 2 days ago, we also held an African Ministerial Conference on the African Agenda on Migration. The next summit of the African Union will be an official presentation of the results of collective African efforts on migration, I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Morocco. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Turkey.
Mr. President, I would like to join other delegations who spoke before me in paying tribute to Peter Sutherland and in expressing our condolences to the people and government of Ireland. I'll be very brief in my remarks. We indeed have come a long way since the adoption of the New York Declaration. Both consultation and stock-taking phases of the Global Compact on Migration are completed with success. We thank the co-facilitators and the Special Representative for International Migration, Ms. Arbour, and her team for their tremendous efforts in this regard. We commend all the work done, which has recently been reiterated in Puerto Vallarta by member states through a landmark gathering. In this effort to focus the world's attention to the situation of migrants, His Excellency, the Secretary General, showed strong political leadership. His leadership paved the way for an inclusive, substantial, and result-oriented dialogue among all stakeholders. The report of the Secretary General will certainly shed light on our future work and action. Turkey, as the largest refugee hosting country in the world, believes that the dignity and well-being of migrants depend on all of us as members of the international community. Responsibility sharing and cooperation of all stakeholders is essential. With this understanding, we are confident that the Global Compact on Migration will provide the international community with the opportunity to create a more coherent, comprehensive, and better coordinated approach on the matter. We hope that the outcome of our joint efforts will make a genuine difference in the lives of the world's most vulnerable populations. We will maintain our dedicated and constructive engagement during the intergovernmental negotiations to reach a global compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Turkey, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Guatemala.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, President. Allow me also to thank the Secretary General and Ms. Louise Arbour for being here. And also at the outset, I should like to express our condolences on the passing away of Mr. Peter Sutherland. We acknowledge his great legacy in this area. Thank you, President, for inviting us to this meeting. We are aware of the great importance of this topic and see that all aspects that we need to take into account are addressed in this report as we negotiate a global compact for safe, orderly and regular migration. And this gives us the opportunity to think about the challenges we have ahead and how we can guarantee that Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development meets its goals and that nobody is left behind. Given our cultural, socio-economic and political experience, we know that migration, international migration, has always been a part of the dynamic of our country as a country of origin, transit and destination for various migratory flows. This is why we attach great importance to this report and to the process that we started in 2017 on the Global Compact. My delegation agrees that migration promotes economic growth, innovation and sustainable development, taking into account the fact that every year it allows millions of people to seek new opportunities. Guatemala is aware that the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration is a valuable attempt to recognize not only the importance of migration to the development of countries, but also an opportunity to generate relevant processes which will ensure the human rights of migratory populations are respected. Given the fact that the Global Compact is focused on migrants, we must do our utmost to ensure that responses are integral and, above all, humane, underpinned by cooperation and coherence of all member states in order to guarantee the protection of migrants and their families. As the report we are presented with today says we need to ensure that we strengthen the rule of law in all areas under the principles of international law and human rights. We thus attach particular importance to the need to unite our efforts to ensure that policies are directed at strengthening human rights for migrants, and also ensuring that states are able to address issues linked to border security and have capacity to identify who is coming in to their territories and leaving them. By way of conclusion, President, we recall the New York Declaration, particularly paragraph 43, which says that we must cooperate and create the appropriate conditions allowing communities and peoples to live in peace and prosperity, and promote inclusive and peaceful societies based upon the rule of law and international law of human rights, with the necessary conditions for balanced, sustainable economic growth. The promotion and protection of human rights are central to these discussions for all migrants, whatever their migratory status, age, gender, ethnicity, disability, religion, or country of origin. Once again, thank you very much, President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Guatemala, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Philippines.
Thank you. I thank the Secretary General and his Special Representative for International Migration, Madame Louise Arbour, for this briefing on his report on making migration work for all. We are pleased with the approach and theme taken by the Secretary General and the great preparatory work done by Madame Louise Arbour. We give it the attention and support it fully merits. We also wish to pay tribute to Peter Sutherland, friend and partner of the Philippines since the early days of the Global Forum on Migration and Development. We express our deepest condolence to his family and to the great cause to which he gave his all. But as we begin the intergovernmental negotiations on the Global Compact this February, making migration work for all, host and sending countries must be our overarching priority. If migrants contribute nothing to their host countries, if host countries believe migrants are more trouble and expense than they are worth, then there is nothing to discuss outside humanitarian concern, which, however, is no small matter, not least because humanitarianism constitutes the core commitment of our membership in the United Nations. If host countries do not believe that migrants make any significant contribution to their well-being and progress, to the enrichment of their societies as well as the fulfillment of their claimed humanity, we might arrive at the same conclusion and leave it at that. But we leave also the compelling sense of our common humanity at the door. And in shutting it behind us, we are much diminished in our own humanity. All countries and peoples have been migrants and hosts. At some time in our past, our forebears were servants and nannies, strangers in strange lands. The richest countries today once encouraged their people to go away when they were too poor to keep them safe and well. Far richer countries today became so because they took in migrants, the poor, huddled masses seeking not just help, but to be of help to the countries taking them in. In life, we are all travelers, Gabriel Marcel said, seeking a home, fleeing another, one way or the other. The Philippines will continue to actively participate in the negotiations to ensure that we arrive at a global compact that protects and promotes the rights of migrants, always to the gain and not loss of their hosts, even when there is initial material cost. A global compact that helps migrants fulfill their economic and social potential for the benefit of the countries and societies that take them in. This is not charity, but economic sense. And if it does not seem so to some countries, it is only because they already squeezed all the good they could from migration and want only to throw the skin of the orange away. The Global Compact for Migration Trust Fund is critical to ensure the participation of all in the upcoming negotiations. The Philippines, a country that has always welcomed migrants, first and foremost for humanitarian reasons, and which has many migrants abroad, pledges to contribute to the fund a sum commensurate with the profound commitment we profess. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Philippines, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by joining others in paying tribute to late Mr. Peter Sutherland We had the privilege of working closely with him, and we benefited immensely from his insights and brilliance. We will remain ever grateful for his enormous contribution, largely due to which the migration discourse has come to the focus of the international community as it enjoys today. We also thank the co-facilitators, Madame Arbour and her team for their tremendous work. We are very encouraged by the strong messages today conveyed by the President of the General Assembly and the Secretary General. The determination expressed by them and the importance attached by them to the issue would be a major driving force in carrying forward the upcoming negotiation to achieving a global compact that we are looking forward to. We also appreciate the key points that they have made, which should form the backbone of our endeavors. We welcome the report by the Secretary General. Indeed, managing migration is one of the most urgent and profound tests of international cooperation of our time. We need global response, solidarity, and sense of responsibility to manage this phenomena. Through the adoption of the Global Compact, we need to ensure that our policy implementation does not lag behind our ambitions, which we pronounce throughout the process. We need to create a win-win situation for all through effective negotiation and crafting a comprehensive Global Compact. Global Compact is an opportunity to maximize the beneficial potentials of migration and bridging the existing policy gaps. We need to place people in the center of the Global Compact to ensure their full respect of their rights. And migration should not be seen through the security lens. We have had very little time to react or to make a comprehensive remark on this report. Nonetheless, we will study it and further develop our ideas to aid the upcoming negotiation. But most importantly, the report has effectively encompassed most of the substances that we have heard during the phase 1 and phase 2. We appreciate its objective to highlight the linkages of the Global Compact and between Global Compact and the 2030 agenda. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Bangladesh. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Libya.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to thank His Excellency, the Secretary General, for his report. This report will contribute to adopting a global compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. Mr. President, we stress the importance of the content of the report, but we believe that we are facing increasing challenges. Irregular migration entails a number of challenges that we need to address. Regarding paragraph 47 in the report, refers to the number of people that have died in since 2014. 22,432 migrants have died worldwide. This is truly a humanitarian disaster. Mr. President, we are also concerned that UN reports refer to the number of poor people in the world that exceeds 800 million people. Half of them are from Africa. Unfortunately, this continent has not received the necessary attention, especially sub-Saharan countries. They do need a genuine response that allows them to tackle the economic challenging they're facing. In this context, we must recognize that migration should be voluntary. We need to be cognizant of the importance that prevention is better than cure. Migrants are faced with a number of dangers. We need to be cognizant of all these facts when we speak about migration. It is clear now that one country alone cannot address the challenges of migration, especially when said country is suffering from political and security instability. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Libya, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Republic of Tanzania.
First of all, let me convey my deepest condolences to the Republic of Ireland and the family of Peter Sutherland for his noble work on migration. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for your leadership and the report on migration. I also thank Madam Louise for her sterling work. The importance of balanced view of migration and human mobility transcend our isolated interests as a community of nations. We observe diverse approaches in handling the issue of migration, particularly in the recent years, that have demonstrated the ugly face of inhuman treatment of migrants, including human trafficking and slavery. My delegation condemned this act of slavery and human trafficking in the 21st century as it tarnishes our hard-earned civilizations. We cannot go back to the 19th century. I wish to applaud and commend the Secretary General's focus on positive sides of migration, which outweigh the negative spin, and the importance of the community of nations to support the global compact on the migration. We call on the international community to act deterrently to such acts of slavery and human trafficking and put in place a better regime for global migration that inhibit and prohibit a total reaction to such acts. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Republic of Tanzania, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretary General for his statement. We welcome his report as well. We would like to appreciate the SRSG, Madame Louise Arbour and her team for their contribution and work. We would like to express our condolences to the untimely passing of Mr. Peter Sutherland. With respect to the report of the Secretary General, we are going to read with care later, and we would like to make some preliminary comments at this stage. Firstly, we agree with the Secretary General in his report that the migration issue is a global phenomenon. No single country can resolve the issue by itself. Therefore, we should stick to the principle of cooperation and win-win solution so that we can build the community of common shared future and strengthen multilateralism in this process. Secondly, we fully agree that we should maximize the positive contribution from the migrants. We should build up the positive image of migration and forsake any prejudice. We should base our understanding of the phenomenon on facts, as pointed out by the Secretary General. Thirdly, we fully agree that we should make migration work for all. In order to achieve this goal, we believe that we should try to strike balance in three aspects. Firstly, from the perspective of development, we should strike the balance between development and human rights. The perspective of development and the perspective of human rights should be balanced. Therefore, in trying to resolve the root causes of migration, we believe the development issue, especially poverty and lack of development, are the main sources for migration. As pointed out by the report of the Secretary General, we should make every effort to help developing countries to achieve sustainable development. Second balance is that we should protect the rights and interests of the migrants as well as respect the sovereignty of the member states. On one hand, we should abide by international law and international conventions to ensure that the rights of the migrants are fully respected. At the same time, we should respect the sovereign rights of member states to manage its own borders. The third balance is that the source countries, we should strike a balance between the source countries and the receiving countries. And these countries should cooperate in order to strike this balance. We should try our best to reduce the transaction cost of the remittances of the migrants. Lastly, we should emphasize one difference, and the Secretary General, in his report, made a differentiation in his report as well. That is the differentiation between a migrant and a refugee. And there are different international laws and mechanisms to protect these two groups of people. In the final analysis, China will heed the call of the President of the General Assembly. We will actively participate in the negotiation of the Global Compact, and we will make our positive contribution towards the final achieving consensus on the Global Compact. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of China, who was the last speaker on my list this morning. I thank representatives for their interventions, and I now give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency António Guterres, to respond to the questions and issues raised by the Member States.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. There were indeed no questions asked. But I would like to underline that there were extremely constructive and convergent interventions that make me feel very optimistic about the possibility to have a very good result in the intergovernmental negotiations. And we will be totally at your disposal to fully support that. Now, this is a matter that I tend to look at from a very emotional perspective, and you will probably forgive me if in some moments I will go a little bit out of the orthodoxy that I'm supposed to pursue as Secretary General in presenting this report. It's impossible not to feel very strongly the drama of those that were trapped in the dramatic circumstances that we have witnessed in different parts of the world. I was 10 years High Commissioner for Refugees, and of course, refugees represent a special group with a special set of rights. But it is obvious that we have people suffering in the same circumstances, in mixed flows, and in dramatic impacts with loss of life, with tremendous suffering, with awful violations of human rights. So it's impossible for me not to look into that reality without feeling simultaneously a very strong emotion and the sense of obligation to address this problem and to create the conditions for it to be overcome. On the other hand, I come from a country that has been a country of emigration through its history, and that became recently a mixed. And when I came to government in the 90s, we were no longer essentially a country of emigration, we became a country of immigration. And this was a reality that in the first years was ignored by the political powers in Portugal. And so most of the migrants living in Portugal were living irregularly, without rights, exploited in the labor market. And we decided to follow a policy of full legalization of the migrant community that existed in my country. At the time, fortunately, the economic situation of the country also allowed it. And with the limitations and the flaws of the resources and capacities that a country like mine had, we tried to have a positive policy and a proactive policy of harmonious integration in the Portuguese society, respecting, of course, the identities of the different peoples that had come to my country. And I have to say that this approach worked. We had 10 years of very difficult economic situation. During those 10 years, we had always more than 500,000 unemployed people, and simultaneously about 500,000 migrants in the country. And this was never an issue in the Portuguese political debate. And in the last elections, that were very tough in the Portuguese political debate, this was not a question. And the reason why this was not a question is because I think that there was, from politicians from left and right, the capacity to tell the truth to people. And to do it in a way not to instrumentalize this question for forms of populist approach of politics, disregarding reality and using prejudice instead of facts in the political debate. My country has a fertility index of 1.3. When I visit my mother, and I go every month to Portugal now and visit my mother, she's 94 years old. There is permanently in rotation someone taking care of my mother beyond the family. I've never seen a Portuguese taking care of her. So it's not only a question of chosen migration of high-tech people. It's many societies in this world cannot live without migration to be able to sustain their own economy and their own society. And on the other hand, we have many societies in the world for which migration is an inevitable necessity because the inequalities in development in the world have not created the capacities for them to provide for their citizens full opportunities for development. So my first point is that I think migration is an inevitable reality in today's world. And when something is inevitable, it is better to effectively manage it. The worst thing that has happened was that at least a part of the migration movements in the world have happened in a chaotic world, and many public opinions got the impression that things were getting out of control, and many media entities and politicians tried to use this perception to obtain political goals, to gain easy votes or easy market shares. And this has generated an irrational debate on migration in many of our societies that make it very difficult to have the adequate policies of international cooperation that are necessary to address this problem, creating the win-win strategy that we all discussed as possible in today's world, both for countries of origin, countries of transit and destination, and many countries are today origin, transit and destination, and to the migrants themselves. The second observation I'd like to make is that we should do everything in the different set of policies we have at national and international level to avoid those situations in which migration is forced to happen. And this has to do, of course, with the prevention of conflict. This has to do, of course, with defeating climate change and the deterioration of environments in so many parts of the world that force people to move. This has to do with the creation of conditions for our development cooperation policies to be oriented and national development strategies to be oriented to create opportunities for people to be able to work and live in their countries and in their regions in a dignifying way. And this is sometimes absent in our priorities when we discuss development, and is sometimes forgotten when we establish the priorities of our own national development strategies or international development cooperation instruments. Another aspect I'd like to underline is that the best way to defeat traffickers and smugglers is to reduce the opportunities they have and the best way to reduce the opportunities they have, and the best way to fight irregular migration, that is the focus of also so many misperceptions in the world and creates so many reactions of racism, xenophobia, and populism, the best way is to have a serious commitment to increase substantially the opportunities for legal migration of different sorts. You have temporary migration, permanent migration, circular migration. There are many instruments that international cooperation can enhance, but we need to have much more opportunities of legal migration, and at the same time, we need to adopt policies in which those that are legally working in a country work in the labor market with the same rights of the citizens of that country, are not subject to forms of exploitation that then generate inevitably forms of reaction that are source of social instability and complicates also the political approaches to the solution of the migration problems. More opportunities of legal migration are, I think, a need, and they are the best way to create the conditions in which we can be much more effective in cracking down on traffickers, smugglers, at the same time that we protect their victims. Another point I would like to make is that international cooperation does not aim at undermining national sovereignty. All states have not only the right. I was prime minister in my country. My country would not forget me if we would not manage in a responsible way our own borders. All the countries have the right and the obligation to do so. And all the countries have the right also to decide who is entitled to enter the country or not. But I think this must be done in a way that, first of all, fully respects international law in relation to refugees and people in need of international protection, and non-refoulement is a basic principle, but at the same time recognizing that all migrants, even irregular migrants, have human rights and human dignity that need to be respected in the way those borders are managed and those policies are implemented. And that is where I believe international cooperation is extremely important. Because we see in many situations countries that are stuck, having, for instance, a number of people recognized as refugees, and then a number of people rejected as refugees, but having also no instruments to allow for a dignifying return of those people to their countries of origin. So we need international cooperation even for policies of return and readmission and reintegration to be possible, to be effective, and to be fair. And this is another reason why sometimes the discussion becomes irrational, because people tend to advocate a number of solutions that simply are not possible to implement. We need to create the mechanisms of international cooperation that allow to implement the forms of consensual policies that we can adopt in the respect of national sovereignty, but in recognition of the importance of the international cooperation on these. And a last observation I would like to make. We live in a globalized world, but globalization is asymmetric. Money moves freely. Some people even say that it moves too freely. Goods and services tend to move relatively freely. We know that there are obstacles, and there is even a discussion whether there should be more restrictions in that. But the major obstacles are in relation to the movement of people. Now, we understand why it's happened, but let's recognize that this is one of the factors of global inequality. It's this asymmetric globalization that also promotes global inequality and enhances this global inequality both among countries and within countries. I don't think that this global compact will lead to something as regulated and effective as, for instance, financial movements in today's world. But I think we need to use this opportunity to move forward in creating a number of areas of international cooperation that are effective in making migration work for all. Work for the countries of origin, transit, destination, but working for the people that move and for the people in the communities that from where they came and where they integrate. And it is my deep belief that the spirit that could be witnessed in this room with the interventions that you made, it is my deep belief that this is possible and that this compact can be really a game changer in the way the international community deals with the migration problems. Thank you very much.
I thank the Secretary General of the United Nations. I also thank members for their participation at this briefing. The informal meeting of the plenary is now concluded. The meeting is adjourned.